Good morning to everybody. Unfortunately, I couldn't be in Egypt. I'm actually in Dubai. I just want to say how lucky you all are to be gathered by the amazing Dr. Abla Abdel Latif. I miss her. She does amazing work, and we need more people like her. So Ahmed, I think I'm going to address your question. I want to say that you made it seem very dismal. But I work in entrepreneurship and innovation, so I'm all about hope. Um, but I do want to say that I think there are some core roadblocks. I think we're really falling behind when it comes to economic inequality and poverty. I think we're lagging behind in resource management and environmental challenges. And I would argue heavily that we continue to lag behind in education and healthcare, which I think are very, very difficult, causing very difficult problems for Egypt. So for me, I would say that the two core impediments to achieving SDGs are two things. One, the inability to apply a systemic lens to building sustainable and inclusive prosperity, and our inability to take advantage of advanced technologies that exist to leapfrog. And so when I say this, I feel that applying a systemic lens to building prosperity is the only way to achieve SDG goals. And that means that we also need to have a mindset of absolutely nobody left behind. And in order to do that, we really need to look at the entire system as a whole. And we need to think about how we can really build an economy and achieve prosperity both bottom up and top down. And I think we're really stuck right now in the top down. And the other thing, I think we're really stuck putting band-aids that address the symptoms that exist in our systems, as opposed to really building new systems from the bottom up. And I think systems thinking follows a much more adaptive leadership approach. And that is not very mainstream in how we approach, I would say, public policy, not just in Egypt, but across Africa and global growth markets at large. And we really need to do better. And I think on top of that, we need to not be afraid of using advanced technologies like AI, like blockchain, biotech and genomics, renewable energy technologies, manufacturing technologies. Egypt has so much in terms of assets, especially in the industrial space. If we apply technology to that, we could really leapfrog in terms of achieving productivity within the manufacturing space. So I think if we want to think about building new systems, we really need to think about how we're going to make use of technology to leapfrog and build those systems. So many of you know that in my capacity as an executive director of a center that focuses on entrepreneurship and innovation as a pathway to achieving prosperity. So in other words, we don't focus on the entrepreneur, we focus on entrepreneurship as a means to achieving prosperity. And for that, I think Egypt is lagging extremely behind in our investments in research and development. We need to increase our overall investment in R&D. We need to build the infrastructure that is required to support global standards in R&D. Our universities don't all have the labs that are required to do research and development. That absolutely has to change. Because right now, Egypt is not a net exporter of innovation. We're actually passive consumers of technology and innovation. And that really needs to change. In order to achieve SDG goals, we need to be able to innovate our way out of these challenges. And I would say further to that, we need to focus on pushing our entrepreneurship and innovation ecosystems locally, which is really an asset in Egypt. We have a strong innovation and entrepreneurship ecosystem in comparison to a lot of other countries and a lot of other emerging markets, but we need to focus on investing in innovators who are actually solving SDGs using innovation at scale. And that means that the government needs to partner with investors to push for more patient capital and the de-risking of investment in actual deep tech innovation. And when I say deep tech innovation, I mean innovation that is based on R&D. And so I would say in sum, we need to partner more closely with entrepreneurs who actually have the ability to solve our challenges at scale in a way that is both sustainable and inclusive. In other words, leaving no one behind. And those entrepreneurs exist in our country. The problem is they're leaving. We need to keep them, we need to partner with them, and we need to back them both financially and provide them with the adequate support systems that will allow them to grow and completely transform systems. Oh my God, there's so many things I want to say, but I don't know where to start. I think I'll I agree that there's so many problems and it does appear very dismal. But I think this all comes down to mindset. And, and I think ultimately, something I have been talking a lot about lately, when the SDGs were created, and I think when we talk about our inability to achieve the SDGs, we come back and we blame, governments. We say we're not doing enough, which is true. We're not doing enough, but there's a layer beneath that we're not tackling. There are real structural barriers in Africa in particular that are preventing us from achieving SDG goals that are our legacy, that are part of our colonial legacy. And I think that something that is maybe a little bit controversial to say, but I'm going to say it anyway, is that we really need to stop the defeatist and dependency mindset that we have. And that means that we need to switch to having an opportunity mindset that truly leverages collaboration and co-creation and systems change. We are not applying a systems lens to solving our core issues. But also, when we think about Africa, it continues to not be economically sovereign. We continue to be deeply dependent on Western markets. We continue to be places of extraction. We are not developing our industry in a way that allows us to achieve economic agency and to become net exporters as opposed to importers. And I think this is extremely problematic. That has to change. And that's a mindset issue. That's in our hands. That's not something that, we have to wait for somebody else to give us. We just need to decide to have it. Now, with regards to R&D, yeah, I hear you, Ahmed, but I'm going to say that R&D is absolutely critical. We cannot continue to invest such a small amount in R&D in terms of government spending. Having said that, we do have to partner with the private sector. We also have to partner with the philanthropic sector. And that means that we need to encourage both the private sector and the philanthropic sector to stop using philanthropic money to invest in charity that doesn't really solve systemic problems. We need to see philanthropy provide R&D grants, partner with the private sector to solve challenges. We need to see philanthropy de-risk capital in a way that we can have investors invest more intentionally into that kind of innovation. These are things, again, this is about leadership. These are decisions we can make that we're not making. I think we also need to think about keeping our entrepreneurs in the country. I work at MIT. I wish I was working in Egypt, but I'm not. I work at MIT, and down the street, I have Egyptian entrepreneurs who are doing R&D in the labs of Kendall Square. That has to stop. We need to keep our entrepreneurs in the country. We need to work with them to solve our problems. Now, I also want to triple down on something I learned from Dr. Abla Abdelatif. Something that I knew was important, but I never knew how important until over the past decade. We need to rebuild our manufacturing, and we need to not be afraid to use AI to increase our overall productivity. AI can help reboot and recreate our manufacturing space. Egypt has the most diversified economy in Africa. We need to use that as a starting point and really start focusing on empowering the private sector and using the private sector to diversify further the industrial space and continue to export products. And we need to start thinking about how we can look south and partner with the rest of Africa. Africa has the youngest population in the world right now. It will have the highest percentage of people entering the workforce over the next decade. We need to grow south. And that means that we need to work with the private sector to start thinking about how we can take advantage of what will be the largest consumer base over the next decade. Egypt has everything it needs to actually become a net exporter in terms of manufacturing. and also to become a leader across the continent and providing products and services to those across Africa that can go very far in boosting on our economy. I also want to say that Takaful and Karama, because I was there as this program was being designed, I wrote a case study about it. Takaful and Karama is incredible, and when it was put forth, when Ghada Wali was still minister at the time, there were some components that I think are core to how everybody should be thinking about policy making right now. In Takaful and Karama, there was collaboration across sectors, there was co-creation, and there was a use of technology. So we are using technology to enable cash transfers. We need to see that type of mindset go across multiple programs across the government. And we need to definitely see a lot more collaboration across ministries if we really want to see true systems transformation. So I think, I still stand by my initial statement that the biggest impediments continue to be applying a systemic lens. And if you apply a systemic lens, that means that we need to see collaboration, co-creation, we need to use our resources, we need to have an opportunity mindset and not just focus on problems, but see them as opportunities. And the second impediment being we don't need, I hear you about how we don't have access to technology, but that's about mindset. Stop waiting to get access. Create your own technology. Build up your own innovation capacity. And that requires a certain decolonization of our mind to say that we can actually create the technology we need to solve our own problems and stop waiting to be passive consumers of technology that we need the West to give us access to. It's not going to work. It's not going to happen. So we need to become a lot more intentional about creating our own future. Impact investing is a bit of a tricky topic. I think I'm actually very, pessimistic about impact investing. So I'm usually not pessimistic. That is one area I'm pessimistic about. And I'm pessimistic about it with regards to emerging markets for very particular reasons. I think there has been a big discourse around the need to see more impact investing emerge, to see capital flow to social innovators, social entrepreneurs. And I think that's all well and good. But the reality is, I don't think anybody has really bothered to take a step back and define impact. I think the majority of the funds that exist in Egypt when it comes to venture capital and private equity, and these funds often take money from DFIs like the IFC, like Proparco in France, or the European Investment Bank. All these banks have a development mandate. And when they come to invest in these funds as LPs, they basically tie impact to ESG frameworks. ESG frameworks are great, but for me, they are by and large risk mitigators. They're about compliance and managing risk. They are not necessarily about value creation. And for me, impact investing, for it to be effective, needs to be about value creation at multiple levels. We need to be seeing societal change. We need to be seeing job creation, wealth creation. We need to see multidimensional layers of value creation achieved. But that means that we also need to take risk and really invest in ideas that have the potential to solve societal challenges at scale using technology and innovation. Governments can play a big role in de-risking those types of investments for venture capital funds and private equity firms. And we're not doing that yet. Can we do it? Probably yes. Are we doing it? No. Is the World Bank and IMF doing it? Not really either. So I think, do we need impact investing? Absolutely. Do we need a different type of investing within our risk capital space in Egypt? 100%, because we are following a pure Silicon Valley playbook that doesn't work. We need to see much more patient capital, but we also need to see we need to see venture capitalists understand that in order for us to achieve impact, we need to be investing in entrepreneurs who are applying a systems lens to solving their problems. And we also need to think about as we build out our portfolio of companies within these funds, that we're actually investing in companies that, when combined together, are transforming a system that is tied to a national goal or priority, and that we're not seeing. So I would say the two most important things is we need to see governments de-risk, but we also need the government to talk more openly with the private sector, specifically investors, to actually explain to them what the national agenda is, what are our national priorities, where do we need to see innovation at scale, where do we need to see systemic transformation, and funds should be allocating capital in accordance with that, with those innovation agendas. And I would say my last point would be that we need to see that our own private capital, as in wealth created in Egypt, actually reinvested into funds that are created. And that means that our investment landscape for now is largely dependent on raising capital from the West. And we need to see more capital come from our part of the world, from our country, and from Africa, actually be invested into these funds with a different kind of playbook that is actually contextualized to our needs and to the situations and circumstances that we are in. First of all, I just want to say to Dr. Hiba, you speak to my soul. I agree, Africa is the greatest continent on earth. So thank you for that. But I think for me, if we want to really change mindset to one that really moves away from a colonized mind to a decolonized mind, we need to be able to talk about it. So mindset shifts only happen when we are not afraid to have open conversations and start removing some of these internalized barriers in our mind, right? It's like when we talk about the patriarchy as women, and we say, oh, we want to see more inclusion of women within a largely patriarchal system. But before we do that, we need to first address the patriarchy that is in all of us, including women, because we all were raised in this system. And same with decolonizing the mind. So I actually, every semester, when I teach at MIT now, I teach a class that only addresses students from emerging markets who want to start ventures, impact innovation-driven ventures in emerging markets. The first thing I do is I make them take a quiz to see how colonized their mind is. And almost always, about 90% of the class has a completely colonized mindset. It's extremely problematic, because how can you actually create economic agency if we're still stuck in that mindset? So the only way to go about it is to have conversations, to discuss it openly amongst policymakers, to discuss it openly in the private sector, to discuss it openly in our classrooms as educators. We just need to talk about it so that you start catching yourself when you fall into the mindset that was handed to us, as opposed to a mindset that we created. And it does work, because I've seen it work. And I would say the last point, to move on, Ahmed, I know you want to go, I also have to go, about the R&D and infrastructure. I mean, honestly, I really think that this is a leadership issue. If we want to see more R&D and create more space and create more infrastructure for R&D, we will do it, because I have seen Egypt do the unimaginable. If we want to do it, we will do it. We partner with the right people, we partner with the right resources, we create the space, we create the infrastructure, we really create technology transfer offices on our university campuses, we collaborate together across universities, and we start exporting innovation. It's as simple as that.